So Cornelius, man, it's so good to see you again. And I remember we were having lunch downstairs, and you kept making references to your life in the clothing business, and that piqued my interest, and I thought that we would get a chance to sit down and talk about that experience. And I want to start with the first time you realized that you had appreciation for clothing. Where did that begin?
Yeah, it was a pleasure seeing you again, Kat. When I was growing up as a kid, my father was a great dresser. So when I was growing up as a kid, you know, when your sister or your cousins, girls used to play with dolls, I used to play with my father's clothes.
Yeah.
So by playing with my father's clothes, I always liked the way my father dressed. So by playing with my father's clothes, I always dressed up like my father.
Right.
So one day my father said to me, he says, "Come here, boy, stop mimicking me." He goes, "Find one great thing in me, find one great thing in someone else, and a great thing in yourself, and that's when you become a real man." So fashion is always, growing as a kid, I always admired fashion, especially when we'd have, you know, the older brothers that wear the Stetsons. You know, it's always tip your hat, always open the doors. I always admired that. That's the type of environment I came from. So my father was a very, very dapper dresser. So I always admired him for that. So that's when the fashion really came into existence for me.
And so now, tell me about the first time you worked in the trade.
Well, I went to FIT. I got an associate in visual merchandising, fashion styling. With Willie Smith. Willie Smith was one of the one of the instructors, as well as Patrick Kelly. So we're going to FIT. I ended up picking up styling and visual merchandising, getting an eye for fashion, how to style fashion, how to do color schemes and things like that. So by doing that, before that, I had worked for Merns, Cy Sims.
Right.
And by working for them, I worked in sales.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we, in that store, that was very interesting is that there was a dress code. In every department you worked in Cy Sims or Merns, you had to dress, wear the clothes within the department that you actually worked in. So by doing that, I was able to really get involved in fashion and really put my heart out there, because I was meeting a lot of different brothers in fashion. Once I left Cy Sims and Merns, I ended up applying for a job at Lord & Taylor's.
Yeah.
And when I came in with Lord & Taylor's, I always wore very conservative suits, Brooke Brothers, Paul Stewart's, J. Press, shirts and everything else. So when I came upstairs to the employee's office to apply for the job, I put down on my resume that I was interested in going into fashion as a fashion stylist. And in that division, there was no blacks. So basically, make a long story short, Sandra Booth Bailey, she was one of the personnel managers. She looked at me and said to me, she says, "Cornelius, we don't have any jobs in fashion right now, but we do have a job in the mailroom." So I took the job in the mailroom, and she said I was one of the best dressed mailmen she ever seen.
Yeah.
So I worked at the department. After I got in the store and went through the period of 6 months, I applied for visual merchandising. So I went into the visual merchandising department under Jerry Blum. Jerry Blum was the senior executive vice president of Lord & Taylor's.
Yeah.
So by him being the senior vice president, he always admired the way I dressed and things like that. So he gave me the job of styling on the 3rd floor in Fantasia. Fantasia, where Dionne Warwick used to go and buy her gowns for her TV shows. So I used to pick the gowns from Fantasia, and for TV shows that used to come on Thursday nights, Dionne Warwick. And by doing that, I ended up moving through the ranks and becoming a big executive. And becoming a big executive, I started going to all the shows. I had a chance to meet Patrick Kelly, Willie Smith, Scott Barry, Stephen Burrows. I worked for John Mark, Paris, Made in Paris, Vertigo. I used to style all the showrooms, and style all the different shows, Jacob Javits Center. So, and I did a little bit of modeling also. I modeled for the menswear line. I completely forgot the name of the menswear line. But it was very interesting. I got tired of the white folks telling me to smile. So I said I quit. They fired me, but I said I quit anyway. So the thing was that what I did with that didn't last very long. So I continued, stayed in fashion, working. I ended up meeting Melvin Moore. And I ended up becoming the publisher for Melvin Moore. So by becoming the publisher for Melvin Moore, I ended up creating the Melvin Moore After 5 collection, the Melvin Moore evening gown collection.
Right.
And when I created that line, it was a great success. The reason why I decided to create a line, they wanted somebody like Beyonce. They didn't even want Melvin. So I told them we're doing great concerts. We're doing concerts throughout the country. So how can we come together and actually create a line? Melvin did not create the line. I created the line. We did not design the line. The line came with Melvin's name in it. So when we did concerts, we actually sold the line on stage.
Right. So basically, it was a private label line.
It's a very good. It's a private label line. And by being a private label line, we created for Melba because the same housing company, the same dress company, gown company, that Dionne Warwick was getting her gowns from was the same company I brought in for Melba. And by doing that, we ended up becoming a great success. Even after 5 collection, we found a sportswear company that came along and picked up the After 5 collection.
Yeah, but I want to go back to your experience at Cy Sims, because for people who are not familiar with the landscape in the men's clothing business at that time, Cy Sims was a major player.
Well, the thing is, Cy Sims was actually Murren's brother.
Right.
Okay, Cy Sims and Murren, a lot of people didn't realize that. So they were in competition with each other on Madison Avenue. But Cy Sims had the best, like Dapper Dan's.
Right.
Dapper Dan's has, the clothing store.
Right. Exactly.
That anything you want to design, things that you want to buy, suits or whatever, you go to Dapper Dan's.
Right.
You're trying to say. And that's where the places we used to go to buy suits. I mean, if you want to go buy a $7,000 suit, you get it for $200, $300 at Dapper Dan's.
They were a discounter that specialized in better national brands.
Right.
Like you could go in and find Armani, Canal
right.
at discount prices.
Right. It's like what I just mentioned. It's just like Barney's.
Right.
I mean, if you go to Barney's basement, you couldn't go up in Barney's. I mean, if you want to go buy a fortune for a suit, you go up in Barney's. But you wait until the suit is out of season.
That's right.
And you go down to Barney's on 14th Street, and you go to Barney's basement.
Exactly.
And you buy off-price suits.
Exactly. And they would run sales a couple times a year.
Comes out to your clearance.
Exactly.
You're right, clearance sales.
And you find triple markdowns of
double. You can go in there and get 50% off, and they give you 30% when you get the cash.
A better brands.
Better brands. So that's where a lot of times with fashion, that's where I learned to become a smart shopper.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And one of the things that by working with Lord & Taylor's, I was Joe Brooks is the creator of the Red Rose Award. I was his personal gift wrapper. I used to wrap all the gifts for Bill Blass, Albert Nippon, and all these different other designers, and bring it up to his office. So anytime I went to his office, he used to have all these shoes laid out. We were the same size shoes, but he was shorter than I was. So we used to come there, Ralph Lauren, Paul Stewart shoes and everything like that. And the buyers would come up and actually have them pick their shoes and have them from the shoe department. So when I used to come up there, he used to say to me, and I used to love Mr. Brooks. He had a lot of respect for me. He was a dapper dancer, a dapper dresser as well. And he said to me, Cornelius, pick the shoes that you want. So I used to go up there, I pick like, not being greedy, I'm looking at all the shoes I want.
Exactly.
So I go up there and he tells me, pick the shoes I want. So I used to grab like 1 or 2 pairs of shoes. He goes, no, look around and see if you like any more. So I would have, by the time I leave his office, I would have like maybe 6 pair of shoes, high-end shoes, $400 to $500 shoes.
Exactly.
So what he would do to me, he would tell me to pay the tax on the shoes. You know what I'm saying? The tax would be on the shoes. The shoe would sell for maybe it's like $2,000, $3,000 over for shoes. He said, pay the tax. I paid like $100 in tax.
Exactly.
Because that's how they write it off. You know what I'm saying? That's
Right.
how you write it off.
That's right.
So by writing it off that way, I ended up admiring him. So I always had a chance. When I always dressed, I always took a handkerchief and had it flowing out my lapel, out of my top pocket.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I always thought that was so flamboyant. You know what I'm trying to say? And I always had the chest out. You know what I'm trying to say? So by doing that, I become very well known in the fashion business. So I became independent, and I went out and created my own marketing company called Half Moon Marketing. And that's when I started working with Mel and all these other different designers, Willie Smith, Scott Barry, Stephen Barrows, Patrick Kelly. And working with them, I was able to create a name for myself in the garment center. I created a store on 9th Street between 1st and 2nd Avenue called Crisscross, okay, where we used to actually manufacture the 8-ball jacket out of India.
Right.
You know
Right. I remember that brand.
And when we did that line, everybody bought the line.
Yeah.
The reason why we called the store Chris was because my brother's name was Chris, and I liked the singing group Crisscross.
Right.
So we ended up doing a crazy sale. I used to go in the store at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 4 o'clock in the afternoon to open up. Because we stayed open to almost 1, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Right. You closed when the last customer.
But the last customer, it's not just the last customer. Down in the East Village at that time, the store stayed open at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. Prince used to come in, Russell Simmons, Jermaine Jackson, Melba. So we had so many different celebrities to shop. So we used to have a bar in the store. So when people came in the store, we'd sit around there and drink all day.
Right.
And basically making deals. So it was incredible because it was something that I made a lot of money doing.
You know, you talked about 2 individuals, and you mentioned their names real quick, and I don't want to let that happen. I want to stop and have you talk a little more about Willie Smith. But the reason why the reason why I wanted you to bring up Willie Smith is because I want you to talk about his influence in the fashion industry at that time, how he was just one of the major players in the entire industry, and he burst on the scene in that late 80s period, he and Patrick Kelly. And I want you to talk about
Patrick came later on.
Yes, but I want you to talk about Willie Smith and his influence in the entire fashion business, and I want you to elaborate a little bit on that.
Well,
so people understand who we're talking about.
Well, Willie was before his own time.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Willie had a line that was completely unexpected from a black designer.
Right.
You know, he had a line that, when you look at it, it was something of elegance.
Yes.
It was something of a prestigious look. It had a certain look, had a certain flow to it.
Right.
And Willie was the first black designer to receive the Cody Award. The Cody Awards.
Yeah.
And Patrick Kelly was the second.
Yeah.
So Willie's line was in every store you can think about.
That's right.
I mean, we used to hang out. Anytime you want to be anybody, you used to go to Studio 54. And I became good friends with Steve LaBelle. So hanging at staying at Studio 54, every designer, every fashion show would be there too. They would do fashion shows there. And I would go there every Saturday night because you want to be seen. You know what I'm trying to say? But I became so well known that I could just walk right in. I'd have to stand in line. And one of the people that I also became very close to and I met was Donald Ross. At that time, it was very interesting because Bloomberg was a socialite. Bloomberg never ran for elected office in his entire life. When he started talking about Donald Trump was one of the biggest socialites in New York City.
At that time?
At that time, he was like the king of New York. So any party you went to, Donald Trump was there. He came to me and said to me, "Your face looks very familiar." So by my face looking very familiar, he ended up recognizing me from fashion. And one day I'm walking down the street coming out of Baltimore Taylor's. That's where one of Donald Trump's buildings is at, on 5th Avenue. Baltimore Taylor's on the corner, down the street from Tiffany's. So as coming down the street, he's coming out the building. He's got these big bodyguards with him. So when he's coming, I'm leaving Baltimore Taylor, walking down past his building, and I see him come out the building. He looks at me and I said to him, "Your face looks very familiar." And he looked at me, he started laughing. And he knew exactly what I was talking about because that's his slogan. Your face looks very familiar. And he gave me his card, but I never called him.
So what was the fashion industry like? What was the environment around the industry, particularly like when you associate with the buyers? And because today that world of the buyers doesn't really exist
No, it
anymore.
depends.
I want you to talk a little bit about what that whole fashion scene was like from the buyer's perspective, from the designer's perspective, and off the selling floor into where the garments are being manufactured, the fashion shows where they're being presented, and the whole marketing environment and the parties that went.
Oh yeah, well,
the fashion shows, Fashion Week. What was that environment?
Well,
like?
the party is a party just like every week. I mean, especially if it's Buyers Week. You know, it's marketing week. I mean, you know, everybody was at every party. If you was anybody, you'd be at the party. If you're not at the party, somebody tells you they know somebody, and you haven't seen them in the garment center, they don't know anybody. If you can't get in a party, if you can't get in a show, you don't know anybody. So one of the things that you had to do, even on weekends, you had to walk around the village just to be seen in certain restaurants.
Cornelius, I want to go to part 2, and I want to thank you so much for your time. You tell some great stories, but we're going to end it right here, and we're going to go to part 2. But man, I want to thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you.